What if I told you the biggest threat on a college campus was a piece of paper, a flyer with just a few words? Hey, fascist catch. Sounds pretty silly, right? Almost childish. But that silly flyer, found on the Georgetown University campus, it sparked a wave of outrage. Fox News called it appalling. Students claimed it was a direct threat. Why? Because the slogan was found on a bullet casing, a casing linked to a political killing. Now, let us be very clear. That is a clumsy slogan. It is messy, it is provocative, and frankly, it is not very smart political messaging. It plays directly into the hands of the victim machine on the right. They can point to it and say, see, the left is violent. They are the real threat. And that is the entire point. They want you to focus on the clumsy slogan from some tiny campus group. They want you to get lost in a debate about tone and tactics, because it is a perfect distraction. A distraction from the actual creeping fascism they are making normal every single day. They are far more interested in policing the tone of anti-fascists than they are in facing what has been growing in this country for over 100 years. And that is not an accident, it is a strategy. A strategy to make you forget. Okay, we are going to break all of that down, but real quick, the only way we get this information out there is with your help fighting the algorithm. So if you could take a second to hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell, and leave a comment. It tells YouTube this story needs to be seen. Alright, with that out of the way, let's get into the context. You see, there is this useful myth we tell ourselves in America. We tell ourselves that fascism is something that happens over there. It is a foreign invader. We fought the good war, we defeated the Nazis, and we became the greatest generation. We patted ourselves on the back, built a nice little monument, and decided the story was over. But that story is a lie. A comfortable lie that has blinded us to the darker feelings in our own society. Fascism has always been here. It is an American story. It just adapts, it rebrands, and it waits for its moment to strike again. This is not some wild conspiracy theory. A book called Fascism in America, Past and Present, it lays this all out. It was edited by the historians Gabriel Rosenfeld and Janet Ward. They show how science based on eugenics in America from the early 20th century directly shaped the race laws of the Nazis. Think about that. The ideas that fueled the Holocaust had roots right here in the land of the free, and it did not stop there. We had the Ku Klux Klan in the 1920s, a huge mainstream group. We had militant groups from the time of the Depression, groups like the Silver Legion, who were openly fascist. This stuff needed no help from other countries. It grew right here in our own soil. And the tactics they used then are the exact same tactics you see today. First, they create a mythical past, a beautiful, romantic golden age that never actually existed. It is a simple, powerful story that ignores all the injustice and unfairness. It is the core of the whole Make America Great Again. The Orange Menace is not selling policy, he is selling a warm feeling for a fantasy. Second, they reframe victimhood. They paint a picture of themselves as the ones who are truly suffering. A flyer on a college campus becomes a scary threat. Any criticism of the myths from their history becomes cancel culture, an attack on white history. It is a way to demand people be accountable for history without ever having to be accountable themselves. And finally, they do all of this to distract you from the history they are desperate to erase, a history not of division, but of amazing, powerful, multiracial unity against corporate rule. A history that, if people actually remembered it, would be a direct threat to the power they hold. They want you to forget the story of the real rednecks. That is right, the word redneck. Today it is used as an insult, a picture of a poor, unknowing, white Southerner. But that is not where it came from. That is the twisted version. The real version is a story of heroes. And this brings us to a piece from the Zinn Education Project. It is about one of the most important events in the history of the United States and one of the most purposely forgotten. It is called the Battle of Blair Mountain. Let us look at the evidence here. The headline reads, August 31, 1921, Battle of Blair Mountain. August 31 marks the anniversary of the largest civil insurrection in United States history after the Civil War. This uprising, which has been all but lost to memory, was the climax of two mine wars fought in the West Virginia coalfields from 1912 to 1921. The largest civil insurrection after the Civil War, and most of us have never even heard of it. Why? Because look who they were fighting. The miners, intended to liberate other miners and their families from the tyranny imposed by private mine guards who had terrorized the region for more than a decade, and from a regime of martial law imposed by the governor. This was not a fight against the government in a general way. This was a war against corporations who had bought the government. Coal companies used private armies and martial law to crush the people who worked for them. They owned the towns, the stores, the politicians. That is a form of fascism grown at home. It is the definition of it. An army of over 8,000 union miners, black, white, and recent immigrants, marched to free their fellow workers and to show their unity, to show they were all on the same side in this class war. They all wore red bandanas tied around their necks. They were the rednecks. And the unity they had was powerful. The strikers' solidarity held firm across racial lines and inspired the poet Ralph Chaplin to write Solidarity Forever, the song that eventually became the anthem of the United States labor movement. Do you see it now? Do you see why they cannot let you know this history? The term redneck was not about race, it was about class. It was a symbol of courage, of black and white workers standing shoulder to shoulder against a fascist corporate state. It was a symbol of the one thing the powerful truly fear: unity. So, they did what they always do. They crushed the rebellion with help from the United States Army. And then, they began the even more important work of erasing the memory. They took that symbol of unity, redneck, and they twisted it. They poisoned it. They turned it into a word that divides the very same people who once fought together. This is the playbook. It is the playbook from the commander-in-chief and the whole right-wing propaganda machine. They create a mythical past, they claim they are victims over silly things like campus flyers, and they distract you from the real history of struggle in this country. They know that fascism does not just arrive overnight with tanks in the streets. It grows in the dark. It grows when we are divided. It grows when we are distracted. And it grows when we forget our own power. That clumsy slogan, "Hey fascist, catch," it is a red herring. The real fight is not about slogans. It is about memory. It is about reclaiming the stories that they have tried to bury. They want you to forget that the true meaning of patriotism is not blind loyalty, but standing up to bad rulers, no matter where it comes from. They want you to forget that unity across racial lines is the most powerful weapon we have ever had. They want you to forget, because they know that when we remember, they lose. Truth never rests defiance till the end.